was a freezing winter night in Alaska. The streets were quiet, and the cold wind howled through the town. Suddenly, bright orange flames shot up into the sky from a house. Smoke filled the air, and the crackling of fire broke the silence. A woman's loud, desperate screams echoed in the neighborhood. "Help! Someone help me!" she cried, standing outside her burning house. Her 2 children were trapped inside, crying for their mother. She grabbed her phone and called her friends. One by one, they either didn't answer or made excuses. The flames grew stronger. She stood there helpless, tears streaming down her face, as no one came to help. In a small town lived a poor black man named David. He was humble and hard-working, doing whatever jobs he could find to provide for his wife and 2 children. David didn't have much, but he always taught his family to be kind and grateful. He believed in treating everyone with respect, no matter how they treated him. Next door lived Mrs. Karen, a 30-year-old woman who was proud and judgmental. She looked down on David and his family because they were poor and black. Karen often made rude comments about them, mocking David's old clothes and his small, run-down house. She even laughed at him with her friends, calling him lazy and useless. Despite this, David never said anything back. He chose to ignore her unkind words and focused on his family. David's life was far from easy. Every day, he woke up before sunrise and worked long hours just to earn enough money for food and rent. Some days, he worked as a cleaner. Other days, he did small repairs in the neighborhood. His hands were rough, and his back often ached, but he never complained. He knew his family depended on him. The little money he made was just enough to keep them going. His children wore second-hand clothes, and their meals were simple, yet they never asked for more. David taught them to be thankful for what they had. They often prayed together, asking for strength to face their struggles. Meanwhile, Mrs. Karen and her friends would watch him work and laugh. They made cruel jokes about his old shoes and his tired face. Karen even told her children to stay away from David's kids, saying they were not good enough to be friends. Despite the harsh treatment, David kept his head down and worked hard, hoping for better days. It was a bitterly cold winter night. Snow covered the ground, and the wind was harsh. Inside Mrs. Karen's house, the fireplace burned warmly as her children played upstairs. Suddenly, a loud, crackling noise echoed through the home. The fire in the fireplace had spread to the curtains and quickly grew out of control. Flames leapt across the room, devouring everything in their path. Smoke filled the house, making it hard to breathe. Karen panicked. She screamed for her children who were trapped upstairs. "Stay where you are! Mommy will save you!" she shouted, but the flames blocked her way. Desperately, she ran outside and screamed for help. "Somebody, please help! My children are inside!" She grabbed her phone and called her friends. One by one, they either didn't pick up or refused to come. "It's too dangerous," one said. "I can't help," said another. Karen's hands shook as tears streamed down her face. The fire grew stronger, and her children's cries for help became fainter. She stood outside, helpless and alone, as smoke and flames consumed her house. David was just finishing his dinner with his family when he heard the screams. He looked out of his small window and saw the flames rising from Karen's house. Without a second thought, he ran outside. He saw Karen standing in the snow, crying and shouting for help. "My children are trapped inside," she screamed, pointing at the burning house. David's heart raced. He didn't stop to think about the danger. All he could think about were the children's lives. Covering his mouth with a cloth, David ran straight into the fire. The heat was unbearable, and the smoke made it hard to see. Flames roared around him, but he didn't stop. He called out, "Where are you?" "I'm here to help." The children's faint cries guided him. He climbed the stairs, dodging falling debris and choking on the thick smoke. Finally, he found them huddled in a corner, coughing and terrified. "It's okay," David said gently. "I'll get you out." He wrapped the children in his coat and carried them, one in each arm. On his way down, the staircase started to collapse. David jumped over the broken steps, shielding the children with his body. When he finally made it outside, Karen ran to her children and hugged them tightly. David fell to the ground, exhausted and covered in soot. Neighbors who had gathered around stared in shock and admiration. David had risked his life to save the children of a woman who had treated him so poorly. As David lay on the ground, catching his breath, Karen ran to him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. She looked at her children, safe and alive, and then back at David, the man she had mocked and insulted so many times. Guilt filled her heart. She realized how wrong she had been. The neighbors, who had come out to watch the fire, stood silently. Some looked ashamed, remembering how they had ignored Karen's calls for help. David's wife and children rushed over to him, worried about his safety. He reassured them with a tired smile, even though he was coughing and weak. Karen's friends, who had refused to help her, quietly walked away, unable to face the crowd. Later, Karen approached David's small home with her children. She apologized, tears streaming down her face. "I was so wrong about you," she said. "I don't know how to thank you for saving my children." David nodded kindly. "Life is about helping others," he said softly. "Hate solves nothing." From that day on, Karen changed. She stopped mocking David and his family. Instead, she treated them with kindness and respect. She even encouraged her friends to reflect on their behavior. The neighbors, inspired by David's bravery, began to see him in a new light. The story spread through the town, and people learned a powerful lesson. It's not wealth or status that defines a person, it's their actions. David, the poor man everyone looked down on, became the hero who reminded them of the true meaning of humanity. After the fire, Karen spent many sleepless nights thinking about what had happened. She couldn't forget how David had risked his life to save her children, even though she had treated him so badly. She realized that her behavior was wrong. She had judged him for being poor and different, without ever truly getting to know him. One day, Karen stood in front of her house, watching David work in his garden. She walked over to him and said, "I want to apologize for everything. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. You saved my children, and I will never forget that." David smiled kindly. "It's okay," he said. "I don't need your apology. Just remember to be kind to others." From that moment on, Karen made an effort to change. She helped her children understand the importance of kindness and respect. She no longer made jokes or cruel remarks about others. Slowly, her friends started to follow her example. They learned from her mistake and began to treat people with more understanding. The whole town changed, too. People realized that we should never judge someone based on their appearance or circumstances. True worth is shown through our actions, not by how much we have. David's act of bravery taught everyone that kindness and courage can break down walls of hatred. It showed that even in the face of mistreatment, helping others is the right thing to do. We hope you enjoyed this story and learned a lesson. For more related stories, please subscribe our channel and don't forget to like, share, and comment. Where from you watch. Thanks for watching.